Greetings, distinguished followers, chosen Chimp here, wishing you a very happy Pride Month in the month of June and beyond. We are in episode 5 of Doctor Who, and I am continuing to review this series by asking two relatively simple questions. Does the episode I'm watching have a clear and consistent identity of its own? And was I entertained? And if you want more clarity on what exactly I'm waffling on about there, please check out my Space Babies review where I go into a bit more detail as to what exactly I mean by that. So here we go, Dot and Bubble. Are you ready? I've got good to go on this. I've got this. It's my boot. Okay. This is a prop that I'm planning on using for a not particularly funny joke that I'm going to drop towards the end of this review. So I hope you're all looking forward to that. So, does Dot and Bubble deliver? I mean, last week we had 73 yards, and some of you may know that not only was Dot and Bubble written also by Russell T Davies, as was 73 yards, but it was also directed by Dylan Holmes Williams, as was 73 yards. So even though the trailer to this episode, and we all know how misleading these trailers can be, appears to be something that is aesthetically and tonally completely different to 73 yards, maybe we would get treated to the same kind of narrative structure, the same ability to pull the wool over the viewer's eyes and deliver certain unexpected twists, and did it? Well, you already know that it did, because obviously you have seen this episode, and if you haven't seen this episode, what the Hillary Dickens are you doing watching this video? I'm about to spoil it, wreck it, cut it wide open, and if you don't want that, then go and watch the episode and then come back and watch this. Don't watch any other reviews, just this one, and then log off the internet for a week. Dot and Bubble was the episode that completely thwarted my attempt to find the right metaphor, i.e. allegory, i.e. message thingy, that this episode was attempting to convey. You see, from the trailer it seemed pretty obvious that this was a story about a young person living inside a digital bubble to escape from the horrors of the outside world. And that was apparent for a certain portion of this episode, and then by the end of it, good golly gosh. You know, during the week before I watched this, I prepared that thumbnail. I'm not going to use that now. This episode is set in the city of Fine Time, and Lindy Pepper Bean quite literally lives in a bubble. When she wakes up in the morning, she calls on her little mechanical dot. It flies in front of her face and explodes into this sphere that surrounds her head, and the sphere is comprised of screens containing images of like-minded folk who all chat amongst each other in a complete babble of sweet tooth, agonizingly irritating nonsense. And she's happy enough. This is her idea of paradise, as it seems, and anything that comes into this sphere that she takes a disliking to, she immediately swipes away. The bubble tells her where to walk, it tells her what she needs and what she needs to do. It even tells her when she needs to go to the toilet, aka the services of Dr. P. I didn't see Dr. Dump anywhere in this episode. So it's not long before the Doctor turns up on this bubble, warning her that she is in imminent danger, and she immediately swipes the Doctor away. She even swipes away one of her social media friends, Gothic Paul, for mildly suggesting that something is amiss in this town of social media introversy. And it's probably a good thing that she doesn't want anything to do with the real world, because the real world is filled with giant slug creatures that eat people, sold to the chimp with the bushy beard. I love the design on these creatures, they're great, and watching them eat the folk is sublimely horrific. Wonderful stuff. Lindy works as a data processor, where her job is to clean up stacks of information and send it off to her home world. She only works 2 hours a day, and then she can spend the rest of the day partying with her friends. I just want to say at this point that the aesthetics of Fine Time are brilliant. I mean, this is a city that is super clean, super nice to look at, but there is also this kind of sterile element to it. It's conjures up the idea of there being this horrific juxtapose lying in wait. It's just too squeaky and too clean, and her peers in this bubble are dressed up too colourful, and they are too happy, and everything is just too sweet tooth. Eventually, she is visited by Ruby Sunday on the sphere, with her once already swiping the Doctor away, and Ruby compels her to look outside into actual reality, into actual physical space, just for a few moments, and it is then that she sees one of these slugs and realises that everything is not right. At the same time, her interior bubble is displaying all these offline messages. All these people that she was talking to, that she was friends with, are gradually disappearing, and it's at this point that she starts to have a little panic attack. The actress who plays Lindy, phenomenal, by the way, throughout this, beginning to end, absolutely brilliant. I love the performances in this, most of them, actually. I'll get to that. And she is starting to freak out, and then she goes to try and escape into the street, where she tries to do what she normally does, and that is follow the arrows and the directions given to her by the sphere, but instead doing what Ruby tells her, which is to move in the opposite direction, which goes against her instincts, and it shows that she actually has a great deal of struggle trying to navigate herself physically through the physical space, presumably because she's not particularly used to it. She narrowly avoids a slug, even though she's standing right in front of it. This slug doesn't eat her, and then she goes out into the street. Okay, so we are a certain portion into this episode, and my attempts to keep on top of this narrative are running in a relatively linear fashion. I mean, I can kind of see this episode for what it appears to be on the surface, and then the juxtapose comes in, as was implied in the trailer, that these slugs are eating these people, and it's marvellously horrific and chaotic. They're getting sucked in, you see their feet getting sucked in, their heads getting sucked in, they are screaming. This world of paradise for Lindy is crumbling around her, and she freaks and runs away. Obviously, by now you've worked out that this is in the great tradition, or so it appears to be, of episodes where the guest character is running the narrative. Stuff like Blink, Love and Monsters, for better or worse. Another thing that we could gather from the trailer, and Lindy goes into hiding, and this is where a bombshell drops that completely froze my understanding of what this episode is supposed to be, because she explains to the Doctor and to Ruby, who she is still very cagey about, that Fine Time is a paradise that is catered for kids who have a great deal of money. It is specifically designed for the young and the rich. And this is the point where I realised that the initial message of young people being in a social media and asking the deeper questions as to why they're in that bubble is kind of shot out of a cannon and blown into a black hole, because immediately this isn't a story that is intended to be relatable for everyone. If these are super wealthy kids, then the obnoxious nature of Lindy has a little bit more gravitas to it, and the very notion that these are relatable characters kind of goes out the window. So I'm thinking to myself, where's this episode going next? And boy, oh boy. This is the point where you meet Ricky September, who dances and pouts and has millions of subscribers and followers, presumably, within the bubble. He's a very pretty looking chap. His profile is awfully naff, like he says, my friend is everyone, stuff like that, living in the moment kind of guy. But actually, he turns out to be a pretty cool dude. He rescues Lindy and tells her and guides her away from the slugs, because by that point her bubble has run out of battery, which means she can no longer get guidance from Ruby and the Doctor. The last thing that the Doctor and Ruby tell her is to use the conduit to escape from the bubble and try and attempt to find sanctuary in this lush-looking forest that surrounds this little introvert sweet tooth ecosphere. So the battery runs out and Ricky September helps her to navigate without the bubble and without getting swallowed up by these slugs. And then they make actual physical human contact. And you realise that Ricky is actually a swell dude. He clearly doesn't like the fame and iconography that is bestowed upon him just because he's good looking and he can dance pretty well. It turns out that when he is done doing his little dances that gets millions and millions of followers or whatever, he switches off and he reads a book and reads up on history. Appearances can be deceiving. Boy oh boy, if that isn't the message of this episode. Oh yeah, and he also tried to warn people about these slugs, but his videos kept on getting deleted. Initially, I found Ricky September to be a bit of a boring wooden character, a bit kind of two-dimensional and a bit heroic just for the sake of being heroic. And that never really changes. I mean, we'll get to that in a minute. But seeing as you have the Doctor and Ruby who are so eclectic and lively, and when you have Lindy who is just such this deep, surprisingly obnoxious but also profoundly vulnerable character who are, you are just waiting for this person to find the better part of themselves. Ricky September, he's kind of just standing there walking the walk and talking the talk. So, given all this and given the confusing nature of where the narrative was going, I was kind of, at this point, not really sure where exactly this episode was going, what I was supposed to be feeling about this characters at this point. But anyway, they follow the trail and go underground, and guess what? It's like the outside of Portal, if you ever played that game. Everything is all industrial and clunky. We knew it was coming. And during the process of escaping to the underground chamber, Ricky has a idea to contact the homeworld where supposedly all these rich kids' parents are waiting. Oh, by the way, Lindy's mum is Susan Twist. There you go. So, bank that one. He discovers that the homeworld is desolate, it's ravaged, it's gone, it's a wasteland. There is a slug seeming to kind of chuckle triumphantly over this ruined landscape, and it makes him sad, but he hasn't got the heart to tell Lindy next, presumably because he thinks that the breakdown that will ensue will be too much for her, and yeah, he's just a kind bloke. So when they reach the underground chamber, Lindy manages to re-establish connection with her bubble and the Doctor and Ruby, and after a little bit of flirting with Ricky September, the Doctor twigs that these slugs are actually going through the roster of Fine Time in alphabetical order, which means, of course, there must be some kind of programming at work here. It is then that he twigs in turn that this dot, this bubble type thing, is actually developing sentiency and has been stuck with the annoying gaggle of these people, so much so that it has learnt to hate them. So now it's killing them off one by one, so it starts whizzing around the room, smashing up various things, and, if it can do that, what does it need the slugs for? But, I don't know. Is what it is, I guess. So fortunately, Ricky September enters the codes, him and Lindy escape, and they thank the Doctor and Ruby for their help. They found the better part of themselves and lived happily ever after. Oh, that's nice. This really got me. It got me. Did it get you? It got me. So this is what really happened. Lindy, our faithful person, our guest character, in the great spirit of episodes like Blink and Love and Monsters, etc., need to keep telling myself I can't just assume that you all know wrestling terminology. She turns heel. She takes a heel turn. She shows her true colours, and she is a bad person. She informs the Dot of the truth about Ricky September, and that is that his real surname begins with a C, which meant that he should have been killed ages ago. So the Dot flies through his head, a little bit of red mist, blood, giving her enough time to save her own skin. Bombshell number 1. Then she goes into this kind of refuge place where there are loads of other people who have managed to escape, and it is their intention to escape into the forest and to start a new life, to take over the wilderness. And I mean, you know it, I know it, they haven't got a chance. You know, they've lived inside this place that hasn't offered them the adequate skills to survive in the wild. They perceive it to be some kind of new dream, but the reality is going to be a lot harsher and a lot colder, and it's gonna, you know, they're gonna drop like flies. And the Doctor knows this, so when he goes one-to-one with Lindy and her friends, they turn to the Doctor. Oh yeah, he offers them refuge in the TARDIS. He says, everyone come into the TARDIS. It's bigger on the inside. I can take you to a place that is safe and clean, and you have a much better chance of survival. What happened to Ricky? Oh, what's that you say? He was very brave. Oh, good for him. And that is when her and her friends turn to the Doctor and say, in so many words, that they will not associate with his kind. One of them making the very tacky description of his magic box that is voodoo. Okay, so quite easy to read between the lines here. They reject the Doctor's help because he is black. By the way, Millie Gibson's acting in the background at this moment is absolutely masterclass, and I've seen this throughout her tenure as companion, even in the church on Ruby Road. I've always thought that Millie Gibson was absolutely brilliant. I'm not going to say that she's not, because she is. Go back and watch this scene and just watch how she responds when this bombshell drops. So they turn around. Heel Lindy turns around as well, and they all go into this little train, I don't know what it is, under this blanket with their cute little costumes, and that's it. They all go off to die. Their bigotry was their undoing, and the Doctor is just standing there, absolutely gutted, laughing at first at the madness of all of this, but then the laughter breaking down into angry roars of despair that this is the path that these people have taken. That's right, folks. This isn't a guest star one-off companion episode. This is an episode where the Doctor loses, and it's not his fault. Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor, as you would expect, a little tear rolls down his eye. 2 bombshells. I did not see them coming, and I, distinguished followers, was floored. So before I go into actually what I thought of this episode and when I answer the two pivotal questions, I just want to say I like to write stories. I enjoy writing short stories. I've written a bunch of them. I've even tried to draft novels. So I thought of this really sort of hypothetical, fictional story where I'm basically that there's a character who's a bit like me, so I will refer to him in the first person. And in this fictional narrative that isn't real, I'm walking along and I see a group of people. I bump into them and they use the internet and they say, "Oi, chosen chimp." This is fictional, by the way. It's not real, okay? It's completely fictional. All right. And they say, "Oi, chimp. This is Russell T Davis, using his platform to peddle the message that all white people are racist." Completely fictional. This isn't real. This is I'm not even on the internet right now, so I'm just making this up in my head. And they also say, "Yeah, oi, chimp. Here's something. Yeah, what if they made a story? Yeah." Where instead of a load of white people, it was a community of black people, and the Doctor was one of his earlier versions, one of the white doctors like David Tennant, and they reject his help on the ground that he is white. Ooh, they wouldn't dare to make that, would they? They wouldn't dare to make that, Ash, would they? In this day and age, they wouldn't even dare. Completely fictional, all right. This didn't happen. This is just me, telling you about this story I wrote. That's all I'm doing. Okay, I'd never talk politics on this channel. It's not the service I provide. I'm not Ian Hislop. I'm not Stuart Lee. So I'm just talking about a story here. And in this story, I say in response, right, this is the way I see it. Okay, Russell T Davis. I say to these people, Russell T Davis. Is a man who he isn't going to leave politics out of it, okay? It's just not in his nature. This is his remit to talk about political things. And here's what you need to consider is his doctor, I say to these people, this doctor right here, this doctor is black. This is a black doctor. This isn't cosmetics we're talking about here, kids. He is black. This isn't just he can be black, but as long as he's not black about it. The Doctor is black. He is played by a black actor, a black man, a superbly talented black man. And for the first time in the history of Doctor Who, the first ever time in the show's 60-year tenure, the Doctor is a victim, through no fault of his own, of racial abuse. And this is the Doctor we are talking about. He rises above hate, so he gives the most noble and classiest response that he can give. He says to these people, "Look, I don't care what you think, I just want to save you." Instant forgiveness. Pushing through the racist discrimination that is thrown at him because all he wants to do is help. And this is a very clear and very concise allegory for reality. Now, I said to these people, and a lot of them are just walking off by this point, they're sick of hearing the sound of their voice, they're just kind of like, and I'm like, just, okay, bye. So I just decided to kind of talk to myself. So I'm standing there on my own, just waffling, and, I sort of yell to them slightly. I say, "Look, I assume that this episode is set somewhere in the future, and the thing is, this is the future right now. 2024 is the future right here, right now. Like, some of you young people who were born after the year 2000 might not have a great deal of context for this, but take it from me, a 42-year-old man, this is the future, 2024. Growing up in the 80s and the 90s, the idea of the year surpassing this century and going into the next millennium, the year 2000 and onwards, just saying that felt like science fiction. There was something somewhat cosmic about this. Prince made a song about partying in 1999. Jarvis Cocker made plans to rendezvous with his childhood peers in the year 2000. And then post this point, there are these science fiction stories that are now in the past. Space 1999 happened 25 years ago. 2001, A Space Odyssey happened 23 years ago. Predator 2, I think. I haven't checked the date on that one. But my point is this is the future. And yet, still, there is racist abuse constantly happening everywhere, all the time, online. It's still here, and it's ugly, vile, grotesque, beating heart is everywhere. And yes, like I always say, there is only so much personal reflection I can bring upon this, because I have never been a victim of racist abuse personally. But it still sickens me, and I see it in news articles all the bloody time, and it is just sad that it is 2024 and this awful, monstrous crap is still happening. And so what we have here, as it turns out, is a story with characters that you are not supposed to relate to. This was never about relating to people being stuck in a social media bubble, as I perceive it at least. This is a picture-perfect, easy-to-digest example of discrimination, of people who are so inanely introvert, who are so shallow in their perception of the world and in their discrimination that they reject an offer of help due to their bigotry. And this level of bigotry transcends right across, and anybody who's been a victim of xenophobia, anybody who has been a victim of bigotry can relate to this in some form or another. Just look at the expression that the Doctor pulls when he goes to the TARDIS and looks back on these people. That performance by Ncuti Gatwa, that expression on his face, oh my God. And as these people are walking off in this fictional story that's completely fictional, I say, this is a very apt reflection of the optics of society, because it is real, and you just have to Google racial abuse to know that it's real. Just football, if any of you like football, just racist abuse in football, it's still happening towards black players, but you can attribute it to anything and the message kind of remains the same: bigotry. The end. That's the end of my story. Oh yeah, so I'm supposed to be actually reviewing the episode. So let's answer the two questions. Did it have a clear and consistent personality of its own? Yes, but it's quite hard to extrapolate when you are going through the journey for the first time, because the swerves are continuously changing your perception of the characters, and it is doing so by design. So the consistency of the storytelling is precise. Sure it is, but the journey to get there is kind of a little bit of a hard one to navigate. Like I said, why, if the bubble could just shoot its way through human flesh and bone, which is a pretty cool thing, to be honest, then what did it need the slugs for? And there are a few things where I thought they are only putting this in to navigate the audience to the end twist and the end swerve, and I'm not sure that these specific plot points were thought through. There's this kind of thing about the homeworld being a wasteland and Lindy mistaking that for ascending to the heavens, and I'm not sure that that message feeds into the actual core message. So yes, it was clear, yes, it was consistent to a degree. I don't think the structure in to get you there was completely perfect. I think there are a few little narrative bumps along the way.
Okay, so I've watched it 3 times now, and I'm not sure I agree with that anymore. Narrative seems pretty tight. Contradicting my own review there.
Was I entertained? Same thing, really. I was confused. I had this preconceived idea of where the story was going. And because that was constantly thwarted, I was thinking to myself, what are they giving me? But when the penny dropped at the end, that's why it kind of landed, and I was completely floored. I don't know if entertained is the right word. I kind of, I really loved this response from the Doctor, and I kind of feel guilty about that, seeing as he was a victim of racist discrimination. That bombshell kind of, I was like, wow. And I kind of said to my wife, just wait till you see this week's Doctor Who. So I went back and I watched the episode again, and I was a great deal more entertained the second time around. And I suggest you do watch it again, because the interactions between Lindy and the Doctor, her mannerisms and her responses, and some of the things that she says to the Doctor due to the fact that he is black, it's a lot more crystal clear, and there is a lot more clarity to it when you watch it the second time around. So this is the horrific gift that keeps on giving. So my overall verdict of this episode is, I'm sorry to say again, like, how many of you watch these videos and are sick and tired of me saying that I really like every episode? Well, I'm sick of it too, okay? But I really liked this episode. It was Doctor Who like it's never been done before. It covered ground like it's never been done before. And it did it with substance and depth and intelligence. And drama, and what can I say other than it completely disarmed me? It got me. Was it shallow in its delivery? Was it a two-dimensional portrayal of somebody who has been discriminated against? Perhaps. Perhaps some people may perceive it that way through their own experiences and their own perceptions, and those people will no doubt deliver their own intelligent commentary, and I'm looking forward to reading and watching some of the verdicts from intelligent YouTubers. But right now I did that thing where I did the internet blackout, and I'm drawing from specifically what this episode did for me. Overall, it has left me with a long-lasting impression, and I've watched it twice now, and I still feel like it's filled me with a very substantial bit of drama within a science fiction setting. Bravo, you got me. Bravo, I got worked, and I'm grateful for it. I got a feeling this is going to be a contentious one. Please be kind to each other in the comments and tell me what you thought of Dot and Bubble. And also, if you want to check out my Patreon and become a distinguished follower for £1 a month, request anything Doctor Who related, and I will fulfill that request. I have a couple more to do, which I said on a community tab that I was going to intersperse. I think I'm going to sort of do them after the reviews, so I can get a nice little trickle of content, and it means I can take my time on these projects rather than rush them and make them rubbish. So everyone that puts in a request, I can and I do and I will fulfill them, even if it takes a bit of time. But I would love for you to jump on board Patreon and tell me what you would like me to talk about, and I will do it. Distinguished follower, £1 a month. And next week, I will be reviewing the next episode. It's an owl. What's there not to like? I can't even remember what the episode's called. So yeah, I'll just leave you with that image. And I hope you are all safe and having a good life. Until next time, please have a good one.